just remember going to the grocery store and having a woman like just lay down flowers for me on that she had purchased already in my cart. So those memories for me are like, they way outweigh any negativity I get from anybody, any hate, any QAnon dumb conspiracy shit that, that's all so silly.
All right, we're doing something a little bit different today. As you might notice, we're not in the Crooked Media Studios. We are in a house, but not just any house, Chrissy Teigen's house. So why are we in Chrissy Teigen's house? Well, we're here to have a conversation about reproductive justice. Chrissy has partnered with SisterSong, a Southern-based organization that works to improve the reproductive lives of marginalized communities. And today, Chrissy and SisterSong's executive director, Monica Simpson, sitting right here, have brought together storytellers, physicians, and advocates for a roundtable discussion about the impact of abortion bans, highlighting abortion stories and reproductive health advocacy.
Fun stuff.
I know. Chrissy Teigen and Monica Simpson,
Very
welcome
exciting.
to Hysteria.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy both of you are here. So Monica, during the roundtable discussion, you talked about stories. What's your story, the importance of stories? What is your story and what is SisterSong's story?
Yeah, stories are so important. As I said in the roundtable, one of the things that we start out with is this phrase, we all have a story to tell. We feel like it's one of the best ways to bring everyone into a space together for us all to be on the same page. And, my story is complicated in a lot of ways, but the very short version of my story is that, the personal becomes political, right? I grew up in a small rural town in the South, in Union County, North Carolina. And I learned very early on, I didn't have the language for it, but I experienced, sexual assault at a very young age. I also experienced what sexism felt like and the harms of patriarchy. Like I grew up in the Black church, and although I found so much liberation there, it's where I also met a lot of challenges growing up as well. And I really learned very early on that, my body wasn't really mine. Right? It felt like everything else controlled my body, whether that was someone trying to take it or whether it was someone telling me what to do with it or what not to do with it. And so that's kind of like the running theme of my life, of me trying to find myself, but also find what it means for me to really have control over my own bodies and my own decisions of what I do with my body. And I came out while I was an undergrad. I went to an historical Black college, university in North Carolina, and I thought that was going to be a liberating experience. And it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. And I saw and felt my own bodily autonomy being threatened again, right? By just coming out and being my true self. And so I just kept having these compounding kind of experiences that led me towards this work that I now know as reproductive justice, right? And I started doing work around LGBTQ liberation for a while. I did a lot of civil rights work. And in a lot of these different movements that I was in, I kept finding this stopping point where I had to check some part of my identity at the door. And what reproductive justice allowed me to do was bring my full self into the work and all of my stories and all of my experiences. And so that's the broader version. The more direct version is that I helped a friend of mine, have an abortion when I was in college. She came to me because I had just come out, and she's like, I don't want to have this baby. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean you don't want to have a baby? It's okay. We're Black girls. We can have our babies. Right? That's what we do. And she said that she didn't want that. And I felt myself being convicted immediately around how could I have this big, broad vision of bodily autonomy as this new out queer person, but could not understand her lived experience at the time. And so all of that came together to drive me towards this movement of reproductive justice. And I started working for SisterSong in 2010, but SisterSong has been in existence since 1997. And this organization started as this collective of women of color from many different cultures and races and experiences, really building their collective power to move our work that was more rooted in our own experiences and our own leadership. And so SisterSong, we're the National Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. And our work has been around building power in these communities that have historically been pushed to the margins, for them to advocate powerfully for their human rights, I should say, to make their own decisions about their bodies and their families and their futures. So that's the very short version. I think we'll have some more time to talk about the true definition of reproductive justice, but that's who I am. And that's a little bit about who SisterSong is.
Thank you very much. Chrissy, what's the story of how this roundtable discussion came to be in your home?
Oh, goodness. Well, I've been a longtime admirer of SisterSong and Monica. They do incredible work out there, really in the communities, helping women navigate through the process and learning experience that is reproductive health care. I was very outspoken about how little I knew about my own reproductive health care. I walked into the IVF process and walked out of it knowing honestly just as little as I did. People will ask me about the process of it, the embryos, the this, that. I still am like confused about a lot of the things I did. I'm still, I went public saying that I didn't even know I had had an abortion when I had miscarried our 20-week-old Jack. So it was hard going public with something like that and being publicly ignorant on your own body and not knowing what had to happen in order to save your life. And then to publicly come out and say that I did not know what was happening. I didn't know there was a term for it. I did not know it was abortion. Nobody said the word. Nobody, not a nurse, not a, nobody in the room. It all happened so fast. And then when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I had said to John, that is so sad for those people, he said, we are those people. You had an abortion. That was the first time I'd ever heard that what we went through was an abortion. So I was happy to be the publicly ignorant one to be the face of confusion, because I don't believe that it's talked about enough, and I don't believe that there are faces put to these causes enough. And that's why the work that you guys do is so admirable, and that's why I wanted to have these incredible women at my home, on my couch, being able to share stories and get to put faces to something that's so real and impactful, and it affects so many women. And I know it just by the amount of times I've gone to the grocery store and how many people come up to me and have a story to share. So it's been a really wonderful day and experience.
Mm-hmm. That ignorance you talk about, it feels very deliberate. I think we all go through it individually where we're like, wait a minute, I wasn't educated about this, or like, this wasn't talked about. Yeah. Why is this something that we're told not to discuss with each other? And I feel like women are talking to each other now. And I feel like we're seeing it at the ballot box, and we're seeing it across the country, even in places where we wouldn't expect it, like the South. So can you tell us a little bit, Monica, about the state of reproductive rights in the South, and how have reproductive justice advocates directly impacted some of the ballot results that we've seen?
Yeah, it's a crazy time, across the board. But in the South, we've been severely under attack for quite some time. And I think that it's important to note, when our opposition really started to take a laser focus on the South was around that 2010 time, right? And we saw hundreds upon hundreds of anti-abortion pieces of legislation floating into our state houses, from personhood laws to trap laws. They were throwing everything, right?
I remember that. I remember when Mississippi tried personhood at first, and we were all like, you are nuts.
Yeah.
And it failed.
Yes.
But they kept trying.
It failed. Personhood failed, but their voter ID bill passed. Right. And I think it's important to name just like the complexities of that, because it's interesting from the Mississippi standpoint to think about personhood, all the resources and the energy that went into defeating personhood. But that same energy didn't go into fighting for their voter ID work, which is what reproductive justice advocates were really fighting for. And a lot of folks don't understand the importance of that. And so now we have this Dobbs decision that came down last year out of Mississippi. Right. And we have to see how all of these things are connected. So I just had to make that quick note. But overarchingly in the South, right, we've seen this crazy onslaught of anti-abortion legislation hitting our state houses. But we've also seen that the South is where we haven't expanded Medicaid. We've seen that the South is where maternal mortality is on the rise the most. We know the stats now that Black women are dying at a rate 4 to 5, 12 times higher when we look in some places, than white women in this country. That is impacting the South. We know that income inequality is also a major barrier in the South. And so when you look at that, it is like fertile ground, right, for our opposition to really take a focus on this region. And so we now know that out of like the 16, I believe it's the 16 states across the South, right, 10 of them have enacted like these abortion bans, right, because they went from state legislation to the legal battles, right? And they went into these legal battles. And now even in Georgia, we're still fighting our own 6-week ban, right? SisterSong's one of the lead plaintiffs in this case. And we are like in a constant uphill fight to get this reversed. But that's where we at, right? They've moved in such a way that they've taken over our state houses. They've moved in such a way that they've positioned themselves on the legal front to be able to move these bans in the ways that they are. And they're doing that in a landscape and in a region that is already dealing with so much by not having enough resources. So the South is where the fight is the greatest, in my humble opinion, as a person that's been living and working in the South their entire life. But it's also important for us to understand what's happening in the South so that we can see how that can impact the way that the rest of the country is going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're seeing in places like Texas that a lot of times the story that is the most effective is the story that women tell about their experiences. And a lot of times the women that are talking about their experiences, they're women who are having like 20 plus week abortions under tragic circumstances. And Chrissy, you mentioned that you underwent a tragedy in your family. How do you talk about it so candidly and publicly and remain healthy and supported?
It's hard to, honestly, and not because of the memories that it drums up. It's hard because I have very few memories of it. I've always been the kind of person that has blocked out a lot of time around trauma of any kind, whether it was childhood or just 3 years ago. So I sometimes block off the year before and the year after. So for me, there's like people that I've met and huge decisions that I've made and then that are from that time. And I'm so unaware of them until I'm really out of that hole. And I've done like so much therapy work, whether it's ketamine treatments or, in-person therapy work, one-on-one with somebody. It's like physically hard to recall those memories. It's hard to recall those days. Sometimes I'll get a DM from somebody and it'll be a new fresh DM or something. And then I'll see that the last DM they sent was maybe a response to a video that I had posted on the day of the miscarriage or the abortion. Mm-hmm. The abortion! I'll watch the video and it's like not me. It's like an out-of-body experience. I'm in the hospital. I am totally unaware that anything bad is going to happen because honestly, I had no idea it was going to go the way it did. I thought I was going to the hospital. I was bleeding a little bit, but I was bleeding a little bit for a long time. And I didn't realize that everyone around me was really nervous. I didn't pick up on that for some reason at the house for a while. And so I was doing these silly, stupid videos in the hospital bed, like just gossiping and talking shit and just having no idea what was about to come. So it was weird. It's weird now going back to those videos and seeing them because they're obviously removed in archives unless somebody like has them in the DMs and they once responded to you. So it's weird watching those and seeing like the state of mind I was in. But there's trauma to me no matter what you say these days, no matter what you speak on, no matter which way you go, there's going to be so many people that disagree with you no matter where you stand. So for me, it's not like scary or difficult to stand up for something because in this realm, mm-hmm. I'm okay pissing off the right people. Mm-hmm. Like, it's that to me is okay. It's harder in different areas of life, but it was just really weird to have to navigate when to talk about it. But it was really natural because Roe v. Wade had been overturned, and then I made that comment to John, and then all of a sudden, boom, I was like, we had an abortion? Like that, it blew my mind. So to relive it, like, is really odd. I don't mind speaking about it. It doesn't make me anxious or it just feels, because it still feels so unreal and out of body. If anything, the things that I sit on are regrets that I have from that day, because it all happened so fast. I wish I had, taken a look longer. Wish I had held him longer. So, sorry. So that sticks with me. But the comments and things aren't nearly, they don't get to me. The stories I get to hear and the things that I do remember are really beautiful and big. And I don't remember trips that we took after it happened. I remember my friends and John and everybody took me to Palm Springs, like just to get away, get out of the area and get out of the house. And I was at the grocery store, and I think I was on so many different meds and stuff. But I was on anti-anxiety stuff. And I just remember going to the grocery store and having a woman just lay down flowers for me that she had purchased already in my cart. So those memories for me are they way outweigh any negativity I get from anybody, any hate, any QAnon dumb conspiracy shit that, that's all so silly. My shit's real, and our stories are real, and the women that were in there, their stories are real. So we want to put faces to this, and we want people to know that that this is where we stand. We're proud of it. I am proud and okay with supporting abortion and giving people the lives they want to live for themselves. It's an honor to be able to support that and to be able to support an organization like this. So
thank you so much for
that
sharing
was so
that.
sad. Sorry.
No, thank you
No,
so
that
much
was
for
so
sharing.
powerful.
It was really beautiful.
That
It was
so
it was really
powerful.
beautiful and honest because
Oh my God, that was so
I think
powerful.
every single person, every single woman has experienced trauma. I can't speak for men. I'm not a man.
Yeah.
I deal with them as needed. But I think it just kind of is a great testament to how trauma lives next door to everything else in our brains. Every memory we have, the trauma lives there and kind of moves amongst us. We're never purely in a state, rarely purely in a state of happiness or sadness, because everything lives together. And that's what it is. We're full humans. And I feel like a lot of laws meant to restrict our bodily autonomy deny the fact that we're full human beings.
That's right.
You talk about a personhood amendment. Are women people legally? I mean, in some states, no. In some states, no. And after Dobbs came down and Roe v. Wade was overturned, we finally started getting some stats about abortion in the U.S. And so allegedly, you're Brett Kavanaugh or some fucker on the Supreme Court.
I was just ugh.
Yeah, right. But these people who consider themselves pro-life are pro-life, anti-abortion. Are anti-abortion because they want to eliminate abortion. But you know what happened after Dobbs came down? The number of abortions in the U.S. went up.
Yes.
After Dobbs came down. So in states where abortion is illegal or highly restricted, like in Georgia, Ohio, my home state of Wisconsin, abortions went down, obviously. But in other states, California, New York, Connecticut, places where abortion rights are protected, abortions went way up. So they went up so much that they more than made up for the number that they went down in states where it's restricted. And this number also doesn't include people who self-medicate or self-manage their abortions.
Right.
So we don't know.
Self-medicated.
Yeah.
Listen,
I mean, look,
we all have to do what we have to do.
We do what we have to do.
And I think that it's important to note too, when we saw these numbers rise, it's because when we did see the restrictions in these other states, people had to find those other places to go too. So it's it gave us a really clear picture as to how important having access to abortion is in this country. And I also think that what this also did for me too, when seeing the impact, and as we're continuing to see the impact of what this Dobbs decision has done on our communities. I remember when the decision came down, I was with my family, but then the next day I was out at getting my hair done. And I was in the hair salon and I'm talking to folks because, that's where I get all of my research done in my own community, is that you go to the hair salon. What I got from folks, and people were angry and they were scared, but people were understanding how deep this thing was, right? It became a moment where people just wasn't thinking about abortion as abortion, the topic. They were immediately making the connection as to how this impacts every other decision in their life. They're like, well, man, if they're going to come down with the type of decision, what's next? What else are they going to take from us? They really started to see those connections. And I thought that was, although we were having this experience in such a trying and hard time, for people to see how deeply interconnected this was to our democracy and to our ability to think about what's next, was so powerful to see.
Absolutely. And, on one hand, it's like, pro-lifers, anti-choicers, you didn't reduce the number of abortions, but what they did do is make life more difficult for abortion providers, advocates, and patients. So Monica, from your perspective, how have you seen providers' lives be impacted by the onslaught of patients? How have you seen that play out?
Yeah, I think Dr. Jamila Perritt, who was one of the folks on the round table with us today, she's such a powerful leader, and I learned so much from her. And one of the things I was able to learn from her work and what she does is that this has put physicians and service providers in such a hard position, right? Our doctors, our folks who are giving us care should be able to just give us care. They should be able to see us walk into that room and assess what our needs are, give us what we need to be able to continue to live our most healthy lives. That's not what these folks are up against right now. They're up against, if I give this medication now, is this going to potentially come back on me? Is this something that folks can now walk out of here and say, and create some negative narrative? Like they're dealing with so much fear and anxiety and just like pressure of wanting to make sure that they're not going to put their patient in further damage or to put themselves in harm's way, right? And jeopardize their own license and their ability to do their work. And that's not the type of pressure that we want any service provider to be under when they're giving care.
Especially somebody who's like up in there,
Please. I want them to be their most mellow,
anybody who's handling
self.
my reproductive organs, want them to be in a good mental
with care.
state. Absolutely.
Handle with care.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Chrissy, you mentioned during the roundtable that you have, you and your friends are very free and open talking about just your own reproductive health journeys. Have you noticed, and because this happened in my group chat, after Dobbs, that people kind of people who you wouldn't think would slowly realize this, realized just how much abortion restrictions could impact them personally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, absolutely. I have many a girlfriend who has had an abortion. I have taken a few girlfriends along for the journey of it. I feel like they're worried that pregnancy care and abortion care, those are supposed to go hand in hand. A lot of my friends don't have children yet. They are worried enough about, is the vaccine going to cause me not to be able to have kids? Like they already have these conspiracy theories of what's going to happen to their bodies on a daily basis.
I got 3 COVID shots when I was pregnant, by the way. And
my
daughter is
doing
great. If anything, possibly a superhero. I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking.
Just go right in there.
Yeah.
Try to get her too. I was totally free with it. Here in the bubble that we live in, because honestly, I live in Beverly Hills. It seems so insane to a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I'm around that we would ever not have access to it. And honestly, what was said at the panel was that rich assholes aren't always going to have access. They're always going to have access to it in one way or another. It's going to hurt a lot of different groups of people. But I will say it seems so untouchable and unreal in this community, and which is why I love to have you come in and give us the point of view of, there's so many women from the South that are able to tell us that this is a very real issue there. And this is, of course, it's a real issue across America. It's going to be an issue here. I do feel like we feel so safe over here, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
When you're an empathetic person that feels for,
and
that's
are
able
we
to feel
actually
for other women.
safe though? Like what if you're what if you're pregnant and you're on a trip in Texas
Absolutely.
and you have a horrible, you experience bleeding and you go to the ER and they're like, we can't do anything until you're septic. And so you have to wait until you're septic. And then they have to give you a hysterectomy because they couldn't just do the thing. I agree that people in California, New York, Connecticut, Minnesota, Michigan, places that have protective abortion laws are in a better spot than somebody who lives in like Mississippi where there is no abortion clinic. But it's also like, I think it's hitting a lot of women. Like this is everybody. This is everybody, including me. Monica, I would love to hear your experience witnessing how this has impacted patients who have to travel further, take more time off work. How does it look from their perspective?
I mean, it's really, really sad when I have conversations with my colleagues and my comrades who are running these clinics, a lot of them independent clinics, in these states like Georgia and Mississippi and places, and literally having to turn people away. No one prepares you for that type of feeling in this work. We didn't come into this work to have that type of feeling. And so it is putting people into some pretty scary positions because, again, we all have a story to tell and everyone's coming in to get the care that they need with a different story. And some of those stories, unfortunately, are not good stories, right? We're not thinking about how this is impacting people who are dealing with, domestic violence issues. We're not thinking about how this is, impacting young people. We're not thinking about how this is impacting, folks who are already struggling to take care of the family that they already have. Like, this is putting people in a very scary position. And we know what happens with folks when we put them in those scary positions. It pushes people to make very drastic and sometimes dangerous decisions for themselves. And that is the thing that we're trying our best to alleviate. And we're trying to create as many pathways to get people the care that they need so that folks are not putting themselves in harm's way. We have to think about what was happening to people pre-Roe v. Wade, right? Again, for those folks who had the access and the privilege and the means, whether it was safe or unsafe or legal or not legal, they still had ways to get what they needed. But that wasn't the case for everybody, in particular folks living in the South or folks who have historically been pushed to the margins. And so those folks were left to very scary places, right? And we know we lost a lot of people. People literally lost their lives, right? And so that's what people are up against. And then you're also putting people up against, it's almost like forced pregnancy, right? And that is just something to name in this moment. Like, you're forcing people to get pregnant. You're forcing them to have a child. And you're forcing people, speaking from a Black woman's experience, I don't have a kid yet. I'm still contemplating that in this world. And I'm thinking about okay, I know everything I know because of the work that I do. And on top of that, I know that Black women are also experiencing, maternal mortality rates higher, right? That's a scary thing to think about. And then on top of that, Black women are only making 63, 64 cents on a dollar. And then we don't have, the care that we need in terms of getting paid for the work. It just, and then on top of that, we have to deal with the fear of having a little Black kid and then sending them out into the world and the world taking them. There's just so much, right? For people to think about when even contemplating motherhood. And I tell people, or parenthood, and I tell people all the time, choosing to be a parent, choosing to be a mother at this time, it is the most revolutionary thing that you can do, because you are choosing to do so in a world and at a time where all the odds are against us in so many ways. So that's what folks are up against, right? This is one of the most major decisions anybody will make in their life. And now you're making it even more complicated and hard by putting these restrictions or continuing to stigmatize or continuing to just put more barriers in place for people, as opposed to creating a world where healthcare and access to healthcare is our human rights.
Mm-hmm. And it does sometimes seem like watching an own goal. A lot of these problems are we created a society where it is very difficult for choosing to have a child to be an economically sound decision.
Right.
And we are not taking the people that are in charge of the people that are rolling back abortion access are the same people that are doing jack squat to make it an easier decision to have a child. But let's talk a little bit about fear before I let you two wonderful ladies go. So
that sounds exciting.
Yeah. Love it. We love it. So opponents of reproductive justice in a lot of cases kind of govern with fear. A good example of that is SB 8 in Texas, that law where it's there's a bounty on anybody who helps anybody get an abortion. There haven't been that many lawsuits filed under SB 8, but the fear of getting sued under SB 8 is enough.
It's like Napster, remember? Just downloading that song.
Napster. I had Napster.
Exactly. It was you wouldn't download a car.
Yeah.
Did I just incriminate myself because I told people that I had Napster?
You wouldn't download an abortion. During the panel, we saw a lot of people just walking without fear. And Chrissy and Monica, this question is for both of you. How do you push past the fear that they are trying to enforce on us during this time?
You know what? I decided in thinking when you were speaking on the last question and the question before that, I decided I'm way too optimistic, actually. I don't have a lot of fear. Even when it came to Trump getting elected, remember that like Chappelle skit where it was like the white family was at home? They're like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, no. I was that kind of person with RV Wade. I mean, like I just did not think it was a possibility. Which is so weird because I've been let down so many times in life. You'd think I'd be such a pessimist but with this stuff, I live optimistically and I really have so much hope for the future of it. Fear-wise, I honestly haven't thought about it.
That's real though.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you got to like,
Yeah.
you don't want to like, you jump with your eyes closed and you're like, I hope the parachute opens. It's going to be fine.
I live in fear of other people that don't have the privilege that I have. I'm going to be okay to know other people wouldn't be okay in the same circumstances. So I feel for that.
No, that's real.
That's so real.
How do you push past the fear or the intimidation that they try to make you feel?
You know what's interesting? I think I'm going to answer this question. Maybe it may seem weird to folks. I'm not scared because, you know, I'm a revolutionary at heart. So I'm just like, it is my duty to fight for my freedom. That's what Assata Shakur told me. But how I get past this is that I focus on the fear that they have, our opposition. Our opposition is scared as hell. They are scared of losing power. They are scared of not having access to what they normally have access to. They understand and they know that this country is becoming more and more and more majority people of color. And so I say all the time that this fight for abortion access is a fight against white supremacy. That's what I focus on, right? And that's what makes me not scared is because I focus on their fear and I remind them in every action that I do that you're actually scared of us. Oof. You are scared of us continuing to build our power, continuing to work collectively, continuing to have the babies that we want to have. Right? Because if we're clear about it, back in the day, they was calling us out because we had too many babies. Y'all remember that, right? And now it's sad to me. So it's the hypocrisy that gives me laughter sometimes because I'm just like, y'all are really trying it. You're trying it really, really hard. But who's really scared in this scenario? It's y'all. And so that's what actually keeps me doing this work. And I think it's important, even with the roundtable that we did and, Chrissy helping to co-create this space with us, we were very intentional about making sure that we lifted up the voices of people of color, of Black women, right, on this panel. Because the other thing that we're also trying to shift in this conversation is that there's a fear that we're not going to talk about these issues enough as people of color because these have been such taboo subjects. I mean, they've used this particular issue in particular and everything around sex and bodies and stuff to be a wedge issue in our communities. And we are fighting back against that every single day. Reproductive justice gave us a movement to do that. But that's really what this is about for me. And so the more that we shift the faces and the voices of this issue right now, it is critical for us to do that. And this is not to say that white allies and folks who have been doing this work for a long time should not be in this fight. We need everybody in this fight. But in terms of like who needs to be leading the narratives right now and really the fight are those folks who we know that they're trying to bring down anyway. The more we flip that script, so to speak, the better.
Yeah, the people closest to the harm are the ones that should be leading the movement. Absolutely.
I agree.
All right, Monica Simpson and Chrissy Teigen, thank you so much for this conversation. And Chrissy, thank you for organizing with Monica this wonderful roundtable. I would love to have both of you back again. This was really, really interesting and informative and lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.